Hello, everybody. Welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast for everything disability. Today I have with me Ibby D, Jonathan Shar, Cunningham, myself, David D, and Curt McGrath, who is a veteran, and he's going to be our special guest today.
Welcome, Curt. How's everything going?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, guys. It's always nice to chat. So thanks for having me.
Tell our audience a bit about yourself and your reasons for enlisting in the Australian Defence Force.
Yeah, so I'm Curtis McGrath. I'm a Paralympic athlete at the moment and a veteran. And as you guys alluded to in the question, I enlisted in the Australian Army as a combat engineer in 2006. The reason why I enlisted was because of a sort of desire for adventure, a desire to get out there and experience new things and meet new people and go new places. And the Defence Force offers that. And for me, the opportunity to have that adventure whilst working was too good to give up. So I was living in New Zealand. I had dual citizenship, so I came over and joined the Australian Army, and the official role, enlisted in the Army as a combat engineer, and the official role of that is to provide mobility and deny mobility, and that can be like we build bridges and allow like the vehicles to pass over a gap or a river, or we could blow up the bridge as well. So that's denying the mobility. So a very sort of broad role. We can do water purification and chemical weapon warfare and landmines and IEDs or improvised explosive devices and a lot of different things. So it's very adventurous and always sort of working outdoors, which is what I like as well.
Given this year's Remembrance Day, lest we forget, and the current global troubles, what, in your opinion, are the important lessons we as a nation can learn from our conflict intervention?
Yeah, it's a pretty tricky question, but a really big one as well, because there's a number of ways you can sort of look at this, and I'm only going to give it from my perspective. We've been in a lot of conflicts over the last sort of 120 odd years, and myself being in a recent conflict of Afghanistan, and that's since wrapped up and since had some developments in that country since we departed Afghanistan, albeit to a negative result of our contribution. But the lessons we learn, is about the cost of those conflicts, the resources, the finances, the equipment, but last but not the least whatsoever, maybe the most important part is about the personnel that gets sent to these conflicts. Having the insight to go to these places and be a part of a coalition force in a conflict to help bring stability and democracy, I think is having a great sort of understanding and the benefits of that living in Australia and obviously New Zealand. It is a great sort of responsibility, I think, that Australia has, that we can go out and provide hope and security and a better future for the people of these places that are all over the world, really. And it'd be nice to see that Afghanistan lives and moves and evolves into a prosperous nation that's safe for everyone to come and go and commit to their own religion or beliefs and things like that. But unfortunately, that didn't turn out in the end after almost 22 years of war. So it is important to remember that the personnel that get thrown into these conflicts or be on the front line or be indirectly a part of it, give up so much, and there's so much sacrifice. I think that's why Remembrance Day is so important.
You're putting yourself out there to protect us, to protect our beautiful country, It's such awesome work, and we salute you. Thank you very much. Now, turning to your experiences upon returning home from military service in Afghanistan, how were you supported by your local community? and the Australian government?
Yeah, obviously, I pointed out before that I acquired my disability in Afghanistan. I stepped on an improvised explosive device and an IED and lost both my legs, and quite a traumatic and horrific moment. But I was conscious through the whole thing and helped instruct the guys and assist the guys in the first aid process of me, which ultimately their actions saved my life, which I'll always be in debt of that. And that's sort of, obviously that was not the outcome we all expect when we head off to an adventure like off to a conflict. But at the same time, there's an amazing sort of mechanism and machine that is behind every soldier and sailor and airman over and on deployment, that when they are injured, it gets activated, it gets turned on for that individual, and is supported right the way from the first aid on the battlefield all the way through the helicopter, the medics, the surgeons, the doctors, and then all the way back into Australia and the rehabilitation. And that's, sometimes indirect. You don't get to see that support, but the support that you do see is quite, large. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of different organisations that step forward, and the defence is, the front line of that support, and it's sort of, especially because that person is still in the military and they're still sort of an employee. So the defence and the government really make sure that process of healing and rehabilitation is really constructive and progressive. And then, once you leave the military, the other activation of the Department of Veteran Affairs kicks in, which is, from my experience, it is really good, and the opportunity and the resources that they can provide a soldier or sailor and airman or defence personnel that is transitioning out of the military is quite good. I'm very, very lucky for the level of support. The components on my prosthetics are world leading and very expensive, and I'm very lucky that I don't have to pay for that stuff out of my own pocket. It's all part of the Department of Veteran Affairs purse. In comparing that to the NDIS and what we had before that, it really is world leading, and I'm very, very fortunate in that sense. And it does make me a little bit guilty of having that opportunity and that support from the DVA. And then, leading to beside that, that runs really parallel to that support is the community side. So, friends and family is the ones that are really close and are a part of that and really make you feel loved and supported. But also there's external organisations like the Queensland RSL for myself living in Queensland, and then the subsidiary organisation called Mates for Mates. And they do sort of adventure-style exercises and adventures, outdoor experiences that brings people together who have been through similar experiences. Also, the Invictus Games, so using the power of sport to aid rehabilitation and recovery is really important for me, to sort of feel like I could be a part or get back some normality for myself, because sport was such a big part of my life before that.
Nice.
And then, all the other organisations like Beyond Blue and it's called Open Arms now, which it used to be Veterans and Veterans Family Support Services, I think, VVCS. That provides like a very intimate sort of holistic support network that can provide you psychologists and counsellors and things like that when you're going through a rough time, and your family members as well, which is, I think, really important, because when you are having a bad day, it's generally they're the ones that pick up the pieces around you. So it's a very big sort of umbrella of support, and it does make us feel very, very fortunate to have that support.
You said that you're a sports fanatic. So what kind of sports did you used to play?
Yeah, before I lost my legs, I played rugby, AFL, netball, soccer, swimming. I used to run a lot as well. So having sort of that active lifestyle was something that I had that sort of desire to get back into. So that, as I pointed out, the Invictus Games was really an amazing sort of stepping stone from me learning to live with my disability, and finding sort of a connection to my old self, because of that loss of identity. Acquiring my disability made me feel very lost. I didn't really know what to do. It was such a drastic change that I had to find something that was part of me, of my past, and bring that with me through, and that was my sport.
You said you played rugby. What position were you?
So I played a fair bit, but I ended up either a number 6 or number 8. So blindside flanker or number 8. So I'm quite tall. So I started off in the backs as a winger, and then sort of progressed up into the forwards because I got bored running around for no reason in the backs. So
you become a big boy.
Hey.
So you go into becoming a big boy.
Yeah. Get it there.
Now that's awesome. Good on you. So, what are the challenges that you face every day in being a veteran with an acquired disability?
Yeah, I just pointed out one there before, about finding a loss of identity, mainly because in the military you become what they want you to be, and that sort of changes your mindset. You become what they say institutionalized, and you get this sense of purpose, a sense of belonging in this family, in this organization, in this institute that makes you feel valued. And when you acquire your disability through your service, you do feel that disconnect. You feel sort of lost in that realm, and it doesn't need to be an acquired disability. It means if you leave the military, you leave that organization, you leave that family, and that makes you feel a little bit lost. So that's one of them. But myself, I lost both my legs, one below the knee and one through the knee. So I have prosthetics. So dealing with the heat in southeast Queensland has not been fun. They get very hot very quickly, mainly because I don't have that skin surface to radiate that heat. Dealing with stairs and not having ramps or easy access to places, I'm always thinking about, and I feel for the guys in the wheelchairs because it's even harder. I use a wheelchair at home because it's so much more comfortable to get around in. But when I'm out and about, having prosthetics does make it a little bit easier to get in and out of buildings and whatnot, and parks and cars and stuff like that. So dealing with the access to places, and I think it's really important with the Brisbane Olympic and Paralympic Games coming in 2032 that we make sure that access and accessibility for everyone should be it should be part of the design of things, but a part of trains, a part of buildings, a part of stadiums, and a part of events and things like that. So it's great to see that that's sort of starting to become more of a common thing. We're starting to actually think about how disability affects the wider community, because if we put a ramp there, everyone can use it rather than stairs. Only people with legs and good legs can use them very easily. So having that, what else? Another challenge. Not too many more others. I think, having a great sense of support network and community around me has helped me through those challenges. It's not always been easy, but at the same time, I've managed to come through it all right, I think.
It is a challenge, but we go through it every day, and we survive, so good. Thank you for, sharing that, Curt. Awesome. I think you've touched base on this, but how has your life changed since becoming a veteran with a acquired disability?
Yeah, obviously I couldn't be a soldier anymore. That's the biggest change. Well, maybe the second biggest change. The fact that I don't have legs is probably the biggest change. And then going beyond that to being changed forever. It's changed who I am. Really, it's. I didn't become a Paralympian overnight. I didn't become this successful Paralympian overnight. That took a lot of time and trial and error and trying things that made me feel uncomfortable, different sports that I wasn't as good at or that I enjoyed as much. So having that, the sport, as I keep saying, it was really important for me. So having access to things that I enjoyed was key. So part of my rehabilitation was swimming, which I'm still doing to this day. It's part of that connection to my past, but also it gives me a good outlet to blow off some steam and get some physical exercise, which is great. But leading forward from there, I picked up a kayak paddle and haven't really looked back. And yes, I had this year off and enjoyed a bit of a break, but in 2014, I picked up the paddle and won my first World Championships and was on the road to the Paralympics. So it all came about very quickly, and I haven't really looked back. It's been such an amazing adventure with a lot of people bringing me along and being a part of that journey as I think has made me focus not just on myself, but trying to bring other people along. So my success is a part of theirs as well. So having that, and then obviously the profile that comes with my story, from Afghanistan, and then onto the sporting arena, that a lot of people are attracted to that. So I do a lot of podcasts and speaking and some TV stuff as well. So that's good, and it's a great opportunity to share my story of adversity and acquired disability and the experiences through sport and transition.
Cool. In terms of like policies, with the government and stuff, what policy measures would you like to see implemented by the Australian government to better cater for the needs of returning and returned veterans and their families?
Yeah, I pointed out that there's a few organisations that support the veterans. I think there needs to be a little bit more focus on the families, because I said before about how they're the front line when things fall apart for that member, that veteran. So having support services around to support them, because they are, literally the person who's in the next room with you or in the bed next to you sleeping, or being a part of your daily life, and having access for them to get help and to get services is I think important. But also some education around what that may be like, given the fact that we are sending our soldiers and sailors and airmen off to conflict, what that may be like. I was taught all about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, before I left for Afghanistan. I was very aware of the signs and symptoms, but my family weren't. They were not informed or equipped or understand what I might be exposed to, so, and what that might look like when I return. And thankfully I'm very lucky that I've avoided, or maybe not avoid, but I haven't had any bad experiences with my mental health. So having said that, it meant that my family hasn't required that, but other people have. And I think trying to deal with the rate of veteran suicide is really hard, and having a community around that person, as I pointed out before, I've been very lucky, but having a bigger community that are right there next to them every day, is that understands how to use the tools around them, the resources around them, and obviously the services that they can connect to help that person transition and heal as well.
Thank you very much for sharing, Curt. And finally, from your perspective as a veteran with acquired disability, what would be your vision and recipe for an end to conflict and the, dreadful source of war in our world?
Yeah, it's a big question, because we've been fighting ourselves amongst ourselves for millennia, and how we see a way out of that, I'm not sure. And I'm not a religious person, but at the same time, I think the the conflict that we see a lot is based around religion, and it'd be nice to see that all those religions see each other in an equal, balanced way, so we don't have to fight about whose God is the best God, or the infidel or the heathen or the blasphemy that each church and mosque and temple puts out. It's just a bit beyond what we can see as logic and reason, because as a person who's been to a conflict understands that we are so fragile, and we need to work together in order to heal, in order to recover, in order to see things resolved. And given what's happening in Ukraine and all that, it's such a difficult process, because one person sees one perspective on something or a way of life as wrong, and the other person sees it as right. And rather than shooting or throwing knives at each other or missiles, it's why don't we sit round table and have a meal together and discuss it in a very long process. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Rome wasn't built in a day, and it would take a long time to solve all that. But I think having an opportunity to be in a conflict, I can see the result of that. I had a really amazing experience. I wouldn't say amazing; it was pretty dreadful. But when I left Afghanistan, I was on an American military medical plane, a C-17, a big Globemaster, flying out of Afghanistan into Germany. And I looked around the plane. It was like 15 or maybe like 20 hours after I had been injured. And I looked around the plane and I saw, people like me who had stepped on IEDs, guys missing arms, broken arms and legs, and eye patches and burns and all that sort of stuff. And I was the only non-American on that plane, and it made me realize that the war in Afghanistan was much bigger than I knew. And I was there, I was a part of it. So that was really a big eye-opening experience, because it made me realize that the conflicts that we see in the media or on the news or whatever you were looking at are actually much bigger, because there's big flow-on effects, and each person who's injured or killed in a conflict, there's so many people that are affected by that. So if we can resolve it in a way where we're not shooting and shooting missiles at each other or laying mines anywhere, we'd probably be better off. And think of all the waste of life, and that all those people that have died in conflict, some of them definitely could have cured cancer or all that sort of thing, those diseases and all the science. We wouldn't have to dig fossil fuels out, because the person that was going to solve it all is now in the ground or blown up or dead. So that's just hypothetical speaking, but it'd be nice to think that we can actually resolve our differences through words rather than with actions. And a bit of both, I guess, but not violent action.
Yeah, thank you very much for allowing us to, I guess, interview you and get you to share your experiences of the war in Afghanistan and your journey after that. You're a true hero and a true leader in our community, and we salute you and we thank you. But CripChat Australia also honors your service and thanks you for joining us and sharing your lived experiences as well. So we, on behalf of myself and CripChat Australia, we thank you very much for giving us your time to allow us to pick your brain.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Curt.